Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from DeltaCX.com. We're a full service CX and UX consultancy. Check us out. I still haven't redone our website. Maybe Christmas. And welcome to episode 26, I think, of Think Out Loud. Hello, Manuel. Hello, Dina. It's the theme music. I know. I never get tired of it. And we actually had something sent in for Think Out Loud today. So, hi, Jose. If you would like to send something in for Think Out Loud, just head on over to deltacx.com/links. That'll give you all kinds of links for the show, how to join our free Slack and Discord, how to send something in. Anything you want to know, it's there. And it's always right above our heads right here. So check it out. Hey, Janice. Hope you had a great weekend. Hi, Whitney. It's been a while. Hi, Raphael. Hi, Ian. So we are first, of course, going to thank everybody for all the chocolate chips I've eaten today. Thanks to everybody donating to the channel between $3 and $10 American dollars per month through YouTube by clicking join. Totally optional. Always appreciated. Thank you for keeping me in chocolate chips and streaming software. Hello, Vignesh. Sorry, I'm not going to get your name right. Hello, Fasina. Probably got your name wrong too. Hi, everybody whose names I'm going to get wrong. So, we actually got something this Malika, I know. I think I can come close on that one. Malika P, also known as Malika F. Okay, so I'm going to jump over and talk about what we got in today. We got something about composting. So that's why everything says Colorado Compost on it. If you're not from America, CO stands for the state of Colorado. And we're going to talk about compost. Before I switch over to my Axure file where I like to keep all of my notes, let's also talk about compost a little bit. Good. I'm glad you had a good weekend, Janice. So composting, recycling, dividing up our garbage and trash and things and preparing them is not fun at all. It's something that people are very resistant to, and in some cases they don't understand it. There's a giant matrix hanging on our fridge, which is like the item, columns of the item and rows of what day you can put it out. And I'm always like, yeah. And so we have to remember that there's lots of room for both user error here in sorting your garbage correctly, as well as room for problems with the company that receives it. Lots of questions about what these companies are doing, how far are they going to sort or clean or deal with the things that they get. Are they lazy or lower effort where they don't want to wash some of these things or prepare them and they're expecting us to do it. So it could be a whole bucket of stuff related to effort on both sides. So what we got here, if I remember correctly, this was a project someone was going to do for their General Assembly boot camp, but I think they were only given a week to do the research or something like that. So obviously it would be really hard to plan and undertake generative research for this type of project. So we need to take a look at what the heck is going on here. So I'm going to flip over to my Axure universe. Here we go. That should be, let's take a look. Yes, okay, me, the optional tip jar, the chat room, and my Axure screen. So here's what was sent in, and I've loaded it up to the web, and I'll load it up when we're done. You can find it at EY, F as in Frank, M as in Mary, 0, letter V as in Victor, .axshare, AXSHARE.com. And again, I'll load it up later. Here's the information that was sent to me. Who's the target audience? Everybody living in Colorado, because they've all got to recycle and give their compost and so on. Problems and pain points. We're not composting correctly. Why aren't we properly sorting trash, recycling, or compost? And again, my guess would be that some of this is we don't know what to do, and some of it is we don't know how to do it, and some of it is we don't want to do it. Context or evidence: according to a recent study in the last 6 weeks, A1 Organics, the state's largest compost recycler, had to send nearly 30 semi-trucks worth of compost to a landfill because of non-compostable contamination. Now, the first thing I did was a little secondary desk research. I Googled, what is compost contamination? And I found that it can take a few different forms. Though again, in reality, I would be working, let's say A1 Organics is my client, I would want to spend some time with them gaining domain knowledge because I'm not an expert in compost. If I'm near them, I might go on site and learn more about how their system works, but I need more domain knowledge around compost. I did a little Googling. Always better to ask the client. Don't pretend you know stuff. I'm happy to say to a client, hey, it's our first project related to this type of thing. You know, who can we shadow for a day? Who can we talk to so that we can gain some domain knowledge quickly? And they're usually like, oh yeah, cool. You know, follow this person for half the day, follow this person for half the day, and we're in. So what is compost contamination? It looks like it comes in two forms. It looks like in some cases, people are just throwing things that should be somewhere else in with the compost. For example, a plastic fork. A plastic fork is not compostable. If you throw it in with your compost, you've got plastic in there. That's not good. The other type was, it looked like for some cities, but not all, there are certain types of foods or materials that people think can be composted, but they don't want them. Like some cities don't want dairy in their compost. I'm not too sure why. I didn't go deeper to figure out why don't they want this, but I learned that in some cities, they don't even want certain foods to show up in the compost. Whereas in other cities, they'll take whatever you have that fits into compost, but you can't throw in foreign matter like aluminum and paper and a plastic. So the first question, as always, is what can we take off of the user's mind? What can the compost people do? So I would want to be learning from this is before I plan my generative research, which we'll still do. What can I be learning from A1 about how do they deal with this now? And do they have, which of these rules do they follow? Do they have other rules? So a little bit of stakeholder interviews, a little bit of shadowing people with some key jobs, maybe going down to a factory floor where the compost is being sorted or cleaned or decided on. So I wouldn't necessarily, it is kind of generative research, but I wouldn't necessarily go over there with a script. I would just be trying to learn everything I can about compost from the A1 Organics side. I would want to learn more about how they separate things, and are they separating out foreign matter now? So do they have a machine or people who are pulling out plastic, aluminum, glass? Now, one thing I read was that if there is glass in compost that is broken glass, that can make the compost contaminated because it's so hard to pull out tiniest pieces of glass from things, and you can't use a magnet. The magnet isn't going to attract the glass. It's very hard then to pull out the glass, and in some cases, that's the bucket or truckload or whatever of compost that just gets discarded, because if there's broken glass, then they say, oh, this is too hard. Welcome to people joining Discord. Yeah, come on over. deltacx.com/links will show you how to join Slack and Discord, which are totally free. Bless you, honey. It always sneezes when I'm on the air. I don't know what it is, but I wish you all the health and the beauty. So it could be a broken glass matter. Now, if it's broken glass, then that comes back to how do we help people know that if they have broken glass, it can't go in compost? This ends up being a lot of education that people don't want. People want compost to just be intuitive and obvious. And let's face it, it's not. Many of us don't know what to do with any of these things. I remember for many years in Arizona, we could recycle plastic 1 and plastic 2, but not plastic 6. And you were just like, oh God, I'm going to throw it all in and you figure it out. But that's not necessarily the right thing. So first of all, don't be afraid in a new project to spend time both in Google land and with your client or your new job to be kind of onboarded, to gain domain knowledge. Every time I start a project, I have to quickly become a micro expert. And I've had all kinds of weird projects where I have to suddenly learn a lot about something. Many years ago, I did an agency project, and the topic was sexual disease testing for gay men. Okay, I knew a little bit about sexual disease testing, but I needed to learn more. Whenever we get put on a project, we've got to learn more about it. This is sometimes why you see in job descriptions, we want you to be a geologist, because whatever this is there's so much domain knowledge that they don't think they can really teach it to you in a reasonable amount of time. They want you to come in with a geology background or biology background or retail background or whatever it is. So non-compostable contamination, how would we plan generative research to learn more about this? And let's assume it's the generative research with the population who just random people in Colorado who are doing their composting. I would probably, let's start making some notes about what we would do. And remember, my notes are always informal, but they are still my notes. So first of all, I always love to, this is kind of my blank template. I always like to get non-native English speakers. Hey, T-Loon. We don't just want English speakers, we want non-native English speakers as well. And I like to tell the story of, I was at a business luncheon in Tucson, Arizona, almost 20 years ago. And the speaker at the business luncheon was an executive from the cable TV company. And they were talking about how they found that a lot of Mexican immigrants that they had sent bills to, they weren't paying their bills. And the, shall we say, less empathetic people at the company just thought that they were deadbeats and losers and, the immigrants. But what they decided to do, and you'll be like, oh, so obvious, they sent those people a bill in Spanish. They'd been sending them a bill in English. When they sent them the bill in Spanish, nearly 100% of people paid. They weren't bad people. They weren't freeloaders. They weren't trying to avoid paying their bills. They just got a bill that they couldn't understand, and they're in what we were calling a low assimilation community, and they didn't really know anyone who could translate for them. So we definitely want to speak to people who don't have a first language of English and see what they understand about these things and what they're doing. We want to speak with people with accessibility needs. If someone has Parkinson's or arthritis or other conditions, especially related to their hands, this could affect how much they're willing to sort garbage and deal with things that take a lot of motor skills. We might want to speak to people who use wheelchairs and other assistive devices. How are they going to drag a container of compost out on the right day? So maybe they need something that can accommodate them instead of them accommodating us, as we so often expect. So always good to have those people in your population, so that they're in my template. Who else do we want to speak to? I would like to get a mix of apartment/condo, which in America are two different things, but in other places they're kind of the same thing. Mix of apartment or condo people, as well as homeowners, just to see if there's a difference between how apartment buildings or communities handle recycling and composting that's different than people in an individual house. Because that usually is different, could change people's behaviors, could change their access to things. Sometimes it's easier to do this at an apartment building because they just have dumpsters and you just add stuff and you don't have to worry about what day is it picked up. And in the house, you have to go, oh, it's Wednesday. What's today? Monday. Oh, tomorrow is plastic. Did we put out the plastic? So interesting to get those different perceptions. So who are our segments or buckets? And by the way, ask questions as I go. This is Think Out Loud. I'll just keep talking, but please, I would love to see your questions also. So who are our buckets? Well, definitely our apartment or condo people or townhouse versus our homeowners. Say the SFR, for those of you who hang out on real estate websites, the single family residence. So that's two buckets we might have in addition to our native English and non-native English and people with accessibility needs. So that could be a whole bunch of different buckets. And can anybody else think of any other segments or buckets or groups that we should speak to? We might want to speak to, let's talk about people of different ages. Maybe meet a few people in their late 20s, a few people in their 40s or 50s. Do they have different attitudes or behaviors around recycling, composting, garbage? So let's say mix of ages, 20s to 60s, could go higher. Yeah, Whitney says people with disabilities, for sure. That's already here. I just call it people with accessibility needs, but that could be disabilities, diseases, diagnoses, conditions. It could be physical. It could be non-physical. It could be someone with cancer who doesn't have a lot of energy to do stuff. It could be anybody. So always good to have a broad range of people with accessibility needs where you can. Unfortunately, sometimes they're an afterthought, but as we care more about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we include them. So they are our audience too. They eat food and they compost and they recycle. And so, yeah. Janice says, what about businesses like restaurant owners? That's another good question. If the A1 people say to us, you know what? The businesses mostly get it right. It's really the residences that are our problem. Then I'd probably focus our research a little bit more. But if they say, you know what? Everyone is effing this up. The businesses get it wrong. The homeowners get it wrong. We're just seeing crap from all directions, then sure, let's add those people to the bucket as well. So let's say, and also I would want to learn from A1 if it's small businesses. Is it, like Janice says, restaurants? Is it big corporate office buildings? Like, who's messing this up? That's who we want to talk to. Hi, Tunk. Hey, Chiwat. Working people or those homemakers? Yeah, I don't know if that would be a difference. The real question is who's responsible for recycling or garbage or whatever we want to call it in the home. Sometimes that's a shared responsibility. Here in our home, I just dump it on Pier Mario because I don't really understand what goes out when, even though we have a matrix and I could freaking look at it and not be so lazy. I'm super lazy and I just leave it to him to know what goes out when, but I am definitely what's the right word? I'm definitely very strict about making sure that we recycle and compost all the right things in the right ways. Fasina says, so selecting our participants, depending upon who research shows, messes it up more. Possibly, because if A1 Organic says to me, the office buildings give us stuff that's 98% perfect, they're not really our problem. And the apartment buildings, they're great too. It's really the individual homeowner. Or they might say, oh, you know what? The restaurants are the worst. So to me, I want to, while we could always do a second round of research later, I want to focus in first on kind of who's messing this up the most. That doesn't mean it's the only research we'll ever do. I want to start with where the biggest problems are. Sometimes that helps us scale a research project down, because otherwise, as you can see, oh yeah, Raphael says, what about businesses? What about universities? And Chihuat says, what about people who are home and people who are out all day? You can see that we could have endless numbers of buckets, and that's where we have to say, okay, we need to talk to our client or our job about scope. Remember, scope is the fancy word for how big of a project do we want to do. You can see that this project kind of has endless segments. That's where I work with the client or the company where I'm working to say, you know what, this research project could easily be out of control. We could talk to 200 people so that we get the farmers and the restaurants and the universities and the coffee shops and the homeowner and the condo person and the millennial. We need to scale this down. Let's start with our sweet spot. And now for a different type of client, the sweet spot is probably their most likely target customers. Who do we think that should be doing business with this company? For something like A1 Organics, where we're going to be researching human behaviors to try to solve a behavior problem, I want to start with the people behaving the worst. So let's scope it down. Let's narrow our scope, and let's think about, because you're all right, these are all great segment ideas, but then we're going to end up with a squillion people. So let's start with condo and apartment people as one bucket, homeowners as another bucket, and individually owned food-related businesses as a third bucket, just as an example. So I'm going to call this individually owned food-related businesses, cafe, restaurant, takeout, pizza. Not the big chains, not your McDonald's and things like that. Let's find the places where there's just one or two in town and they don't have a franchise headquarters telling them how to behave. These are people making their own rules. Let's see. Drew says, what about geographic differences? Drew's totally right. That is a whole other bunch of buckets we could deal with. Are we seeing different behaviors from downtown Denver than we're seeing out on the beef ranches? Totally unknown, right? More segments. So technically, you're all right. But for our own sanity and to get control of this project before it runs away from us, let's pretend that A1 Organics has told us that the worst offenders are regular people living in apartments, condos, and houses, and small individually owned food-related businesses. So we're just going to pretend those are our worst offenders, and we're going to start our research there, but we can always do more research later. People forget this. They think, oh no, once I research, well, that's it. That's the thing, you know, and scene. Where's my prop? But that's not true. You can always do another round of research and say, okay, now that we learned that about that group, let's go check out some of these other groups. We need to know more. We need to talk to office buildings and disabled people. Go. Whatever it is. Okay, so let's see. Kaushik says, I have one query for recruiting incentives. Who pays for those, the client or the user researcher's company? It's pretty much always the client, either directly or indirectly, usually indirectly. So typically, let's say I'm an agency and I've been hired by the garbage or composting company to conduct this research. Typically, I pay the incentives and the company pays me back. That way, the incentive comes from me. It doesn't come from the company. They don't have to worry, how do I write this off on my taxes? They're just paying my company a lump of money, and some of it goes to us and some of it goes to the incentives. I don't mark up the incentives. If I pay $3,000 of incentives, I bill my client $3,000. So good question. Incentives are generally do not come out of my pocket, out of the goodness of my heart, no matter how good my heart is, and it is. The client still has to pay for it. YouTube watcher says, you're trying to figure out what types of users you want to target in your research? Yes. If you've joined late, that's where we are right now. We have a fake project and we're thinking about who would we research with? And the answer is the entire state of Colorado, which we could divide up into segments and buckets and personas. But in order for this project to not run away from us, we're going to pretend that we've had some internal conversations with our client. We've learned that they are most worried about apartment and condo people, homeowners, and small food-related businesses like cafe, restaurant, pizzeria, kebab shop, like individually owned, not people who have a franchise telling them how to compost or something like that. We do want to get a mix, so we'll assume that's our 3 buckets. We'll also have a mix of ages. We also have a mix of native English speakers and non-native English speakers, and we do want to find some people with accessibility needs if we can. We don't want to save them until later, though we could always meet a few of them now and realize, whoa, we need to research more of these people in a second round of research. So let's imagine that we have 3 key buckets, and within those buckets we'll get a mix of ages, genders, English speaking, things like that. So I definitely want to go on the high end per segment, because if I have 12 per segment, within that I need ages, genders, English speaking. So I'm probably going to bump that up a little bit. I would probably say, all in all, I think even though we usually say 8 to 12, because I'm kind of layering into this ages, genders, English proficiency, some accessibility needs, I think I want to go past the usual 8 to 12, and I want to get 20 per segment, just roughly. That way I can get 20 homeowners, some of different genders, some of different ages, some of different English proficiency, and mix and match it up a little bit. So let's say we end up with roughly 60 people. Now, sometimes people see 60 and they go, oh my gosh, that's so huge, it's going to take forever. Depends how many researchers you have working on it. At my company, when we do these things, we put 2 or 3 researchers on it, and if we can do a great job recruiting ahead of time, schedule everything the same week, sometimes we can get 3 people to do 60 interviews in a week and a half, even spacing them out. You know, if people can do 3 or 4 per day, that means they're doing 15 or 20 per week. And if there's 3 of us, then yeah, we could probably comfortably get that done in a week and a half. Then, of course, we have to start analyzing. That's just running the sessions. So don't be afraid of numbers like 60. I know it in boot camps, they say go talk to 3 people. And sometimes at companies, they say go talk to 5 or 6 people. We don't have time. But we're pretending for these projects on this channel that we're being given the correct time to run the right research. So we would have a screener survey to make sure we're finding the right people, mix and match people of different ages and other qualities. Now, we've got a couple of choices on how we do this research. We can certainly call people up or get them on Zoom or Google Meet and talk to them about what they do. Or we can go watch them. I would love to go and watch them, because this is a physical activity that happens probably many times a day in people's homes. You know, we got Amazon packages today. We crack them open. We put the paper in the paper thing. We put the plastic in the plastic thing. We put everything in its right place. So many times a day, people are getting stuff and dealing with stuff and putting things in their right place. So maybe we try to conduct a study where we're going to be in people's homes with them for 2 hours. Let's say it's the 2 hours when they're going to open up their mail or packages, and they're going to prepare their dinner. We don't have to watch them eat, but we can come back when they're done eating and they're cleaning up and see what do they do with the unused food or food scraps that they're not going to save. Do they end up putting things in the right places? Now remember, we're not there to teach them. We're not there to go, that's not where chicken bones go. We're just there to watch them and record what they're doing. Janice says, can you clarify the segments 20 homeowners, 20 apartment or condo dwellers, and 20 individually owned small food related businesses. Let's say that's our first round of research. Those are the people we're going to focus on. Let's pretend A1 Organic said these are our worst offenders. So I would probably like to be watching people in their home. Let's call it a 3-hour on-site observational study. And it's really contextual inquiry. We're going to do stuff, and then later we're going to interview them and ask them some questions. So we'll say some interviews, or you could say contextual inquiry. It is not going to be remote. We are going to go to their businesses, go to their homes, etc. Let's imagine we have 2 teams here. We have a lead researcher. Each has an assistant. So we've got 2 people out there at a time. Of course, if we want to run 3 at a time, we need 3 lead researchers and 3 assistants. Again, we can always make a project go faster by throwing more humans at it. 2 research teams will do this more slowly than 3 research teams. Math. So up to us on how we want to sort that out. Let's pretend we're going to do 2 research teams. These are 3 hours each. These are 60. We can't get that many done in a week, because if they're 3-hour studies, we can maybe do 1 or 2 in a day before we're just worn out. We can't do 3. Most people can't do more than 1. They would just be fried from all that attention. Drew says some of these homes could be split into apartments. Yeah, we would want to make sure that we are recruiting for people in a single family residence, not a home that's been split into multiple dwellings. SFR, single family residence. So yeah, if we need to speed this puppy up, we have 3 research teams, 4 research teams. You know, if you have the people, you can get it done faster. So maybe we have 3 research teams. It's a dream. It's a lot of people, but let's pretend we're an agency and we have the people. Raphael says, I wonder how confident we could be that the participants will follow what they actually do, as opposed to them trying to do the right thing for the observer. I think it depends on how we explain the project to them. You know, I do allow people to tell small lies in the course of research if it will help things not be biased. Maybe we say that we are researching some people's activities before and after they have dinner. You know, hey, we just want to see common things that you do when you've come home from work or your workday has ended, and you're just going to do some common things around your house. Well, we don't need to watch you eat dinner, but we want to see what you do after dinner. And we don't have to tell them that it's about garbage and compost and recycling, and we can just take a look. And I mean, once we're done watching them, then we can ask them questions about those types of things. So remember, you don't have to tell them these things. It's okay. We don't want to outright lie, but well, you can tell little lies, micro lies. But that might be something we do so that we don't bias people, because Raphael's totally right. If you say, hey, we want to come watch how you compost, oh, you can be sure everybody's going to be on their best behavior. They're going to wash their chicken bones. Like, they never do that. So he's right. We would have to come up with something that doesn't clue people to what we're doing. Very often, especially when I'm coming in as an agency, I sometimes don't tell them who my client is. So I might lie about it. I might say, well, you know, it's a client considering making a home or kitchen product, so we just want to see what you do at home before or after dinner. You know, again, it's the only time in your life I give you permission to tell small lies that don't hurt anybody. Manuel says 3 hours. Would that be recorded or notes taken during the study? Preferably both. If you can get there with one or more video cameras, ask Larry Marine about this. He'll tell you about studies he's done where they set up a few video cameras getting different angles of things. Maybe you've got a video camera on a tripod that's looking right at their garbage and recycling, if you happen to notice where it was. You know, and then you've got one that follows people around a little bit. But again, you have to get their permission. You're going to have to give them a nice stack of money to be in their home doing these things. And you have to have a very clear consent form that makes sure they understand this is not going to be seen by the public at all. This is private and anonymous. Yes. So yeah, little harder to plan, but hey, if A1 wants answers, this is how we get answers. If you want the cheapest, fastest thing you can do, then you send people a survey saying, why do you suck so bad at composting? Please type in this box. That's the fastest, easiest thing you can do, but it's definitely not going to give us the type of information that we want to understand people's behaviors and perspectives. And afterwards, I might feel comfortable asking people questions like, oh, I noticed that you kept this plate of chicken bones off to the side. What will you end up doing with that? Oh, we throw it out in the yard. Oh, we throw it in the garbage. Oh, we compost it. And we're not going to tell them they're right or wrong. We're not going to say, oh, you can't compost chicken bones. Or, yeah, you should compost chicken bones. We just want to learn what they do. And these are where you can ask those unbiased questions based on things you see. So those are some things that we would be looking for. So let's write down some of these goals. What are we trying to learn in this study? Everybody join in. Everybody sing along with me. What are we trying to learn in this study? I don't want to put something generic like attitudes about composting. We could put that, but sure, what does that look like, and how do we end up making that actionable? That's the tough question. So we could say attitudes about composting and recycling, etc. But then remember, I'm going to expect you to help me come up with questions or things we can observe that will tell us what those attitudes are. Because you can't just go to someone and go, hi, what's your attitude about composting? That's definitely an accidentally leading question, since people want to look like they're eco. Unless they have a bumper sticker that says, hooray, let's drill for oil, they probably want to look eco. They want to look responsible. They want to look like they're doing the right thing. So, that. So, we could say how they separate things, how they prepare, and I'm calling them things because I don't want to keep writing composting, recycling, paper, aluminum. Let's just call them things. I don't have a better word. How they prepare things. For example, do they wash containers or aluminum before putting in a I guess they might have like a garbage can, or I'm just going to call it receptacle. Is that how you spell receptacle? No. In a thing. I'm just going to call everything thing today. I'm so sleepy. Putting in a bin. I'm just going to go British on this one. I also remember when I lived in Northern California, we got a tiny little thing for compost. Tiny. It was like loaf of bread, tiny, and I was like, I'm gonna fill that in a minute. That's what am I gonna do with that? That was our little compost bin. Fasina says, what they do with waste they produce. Yeah, exactly. Manuel says, any knowledge gaps about composting? Yeah, exactly. We have to see those knowledge gaps. We can't ask about those knowledge gaps. We can't say, what don't you know about composting? I don't even know what I don't even know. So these are things that we have to watch. For example, if we know that plastic doesn't go in compost and we watch these people throw plastic into the compost, then we can ask them later, what types of things should go in compost? And they might say, oh yeah, those little forks, they can go into compost because they're just going to separate them out for me. So we can ask questions later about this, but we can't just ask people, what don't you know? Fasina says sorting of waste. Yeah, these are better terms. My terms are crappy today. Manuel says, how do they sort things after being used? Drew's going with bin. So yeah, how do they separate? We can clean this up a little. How do they separate or sort? We'll just go with waste. That's a good enough word. Wish cycling. What's that? What is wish cycling? Janice has a term for us. Let's learn it. Janice, what's wish cycling? Goals. One thing, and we have to decide whether we want to put this on the screener survey and it's some sort of sub bucket, or if we want to learn it when we're there. Could be, Janice says, there's a term called wish cycling to describe those who identify as being environmentally conscious but also lazy. Yeah, so are people wish cyclers? What do they think they need to do versus what the waste companies will do? So for example, here, sometimes I will wash out my plastics, but I don't always wash out my aluminums. I'm a little bit lazier about aluminums. And my thought is like, that's going into like a 2000 degree melter. If I have like a little bean on it, that's gonna get incinerated instantly, so I don't need spotless aluminum. But maybe I do. Maybe I'm wrong about how much I need to wash it. I think, well, they're gonna wash it, but that's something I've made up. I don't know. So a good thing to learn is, what do people think they need to do versus what they think an A1 Organics is going to do. Are they going to wash this stuff? Do I really have to wash this stuff? Aren't they going to wash this stuff? Do I really have to sort this stuff? Aren't they going to sort this stuff? So I want to learn what do they think they need to do versus what they think the waste company will do. It's hard to ask people if they're ever lazy about being eco. People don't always want to admit to that. I don't know if political leanings will matter. We might find some people who don't believe in climate change, don't really want to recycle anything. They just throw everything in the landfill. But we know from the original statement, the problem statement, that this isn't about people are sending everything to the landfill. This is about A1 Organics is getting truck full of things marked as compost, and there's crap in there that isn't compost, and now the compost is contaminated. So I'm less worried about are people doing any composting than the right stuff. That means we probably have to screen in the survey for that. We're going to have to screen for people who do sort compost. Now that is going to give away a little bit of what we're there to talk to them about. So I would probably ask a couple of other kitchen questions in the screener survey as decoys. Ask other kitchen food questions as decoys. Just so that when people get our screener survey, they don't go, oh, obviously they're studying compost. We can be a little bit sneakier if there's questions about composting or who does the cooking, or something like that, just to throw them off the scent that this is specifically about that type of thing. Let's see, let's roll back. Fasina says, is there anyone who in homes decides where what goes? Is this a significant goal? Yeah, I don't know who decides where what goes. What situations prevent people from sorting things? Let's see what else. Drew says differences in rules between current and old town. So it sounds like Drew is saying, what if I moved from someplace and now where I live has different rules and I didn't catch on to them or I didn't know about them and I'm following the rules from where I used to live and those rules are a mismatch. Where's their information coming from? What do they know about composting and where did they get that info? Okay, that's possible. Gonna need more space here. YouTube watcher, when do you suggest making this type of plan? Is it when you've first been introduced or briefed about the project at hand? Okay, so great question. Typically, I am making a research. I am thinking about this research plan early on because typically I'm not hired as an agency or consultancy until my client has a sense of how long the project is and what it's going to cost them, because I can't just be like, hey, we'll do a research project for you, hire me and I'll figure out later what it costs. Nobody likes that. They've got budgets and timing in mind. So typically I have to do a mini version of this. I at least have to figure out how many people are we? I have to at least figure out some of the participant profile, check that with the client, and some of the methods like, hey, we think we want to meet 60 of your composting customers, and we're going to go to their house and watch what they do, and that part, and we think our research is going to take a total of 12 weeks. Let's just imagine this is a 3-month research project. I think it could possibly be longer, 3 to 4 months. And again, I've got these numbers here, but let's say we're giving each person $300. Is that $18,000 of incentives? This isn't a cheap project, but if you want to do it right, it's usually not cheap. 300 times 60. Yeah, that's $18,000 for incentives. So just making up some general guessed at numbers. Could be more or less. But I've got to be able to tell a client this, like, hey, I need $150,000 and 4 months to do the research project that's going to answer your questions. And they can either be like, yeah, or no, or let's adjust that a little. So, excuse me, I have to do a little bit of this planning up front so I can go to them with a proposal. I won't have all of my research goals and I won't have all of my questions, but I'll have the beginning of it so that I can say, hey, do you agree to something that takes this long and includes this many people? Raphael says something along the lines of, what would motivate them to do it properly? I never ask those questions because that's where people are making a guess about their future and nobody knows. What would motivate you to lose 10 pounds? Remember that when given a make, change, or die diagnosis from their doctor, only 1 in 10 people, statistically speaking, will make the change that will keep them alive. You would think that a change or die diagnosis would make most people change, but studies have found that 1 in 10 usually changes. We all know people whose doctors told them stop smoking or it'll kill you, and they kept smoking. We all know people, etc. You know where I'm going with that. So, it's hard to ask people what would motivate them to make change because they usually don't even know, or they end up not being motivated anyway. T-Loon says, we can't predict the future. YouTube Watcher says, how'd you get the 130,000 number? Yeah, this is probably off. It's probably higher. I'm trying to think of how much it would cost my company to have 4 researchers. This is our fake team here. No, I'm sorry, we ended up with 6. 6 researchers working full-time for 4 months. This is a huge number. I don't even remember what some of our pricing would be, but this is a huge number. Let's call it $250,000. 6 people full-time for 6 months. I mean, put it this way. If you had workers, let's use some American numbers. Let's say you have workers being paid $120,000 a year. If you had 6 of them working for half the year, that's $360,000. Now, of course, in our case, let's say we've got 3 higher level people and 2 lower level people. So maybe you've got some people making 120 and some people making 75. Okay, that's 195 divided by 2 because it's it's a 4-month project. 195 divided by 3, it's a third of the year, times 6 people is $390,000 of internal salaries. We probably charge more. But I'll just leave this. I didn't do the exact math on this. Let's just pretend this is $300,000 to my company or $390,000 to your internal workers and lots of incentives. But again, I'm not using real numbers right now. I'm just doing ballpark guesses. If this were a real client, I would be estimating this down to the day, and I would know exactly how many days we intend to spend on this. Some days are lost. Some days we can't do very much. We're waiting for stuff, and I don't charge for those days. Some companies do. YouTube Watcher, do we always need to give incentives when recruiting participants? When is it okay not to give cash incentives? The only time it's not okay to give an incentive is if you are blocked by law or blocked by ethics. Sometimes government agencies doing research cannot give people money because government relationships, rules about gifts. If it is blocked by legalities or ethics, you don't give incentives. Otherwise, you nearly always give incentives. You are going to sit in that person's house for hours and video them and make them feel like a little mouse in a cage. You should throw some money at them. So I always advise that, again, unless it is considered unethical or inappropriate in your particular line of work, you definitely want to give people incentives. So that would be a pretty much always. So these are... Janice, how are we doing on this? Because I only have 8 minutes left, and I don't think we should continue this next week. I feel like even though we don't have exact questions, we have a really nice skeleton of what we would end up with. I think we would definitely end up with some personas or typologies, and I can't say ahead of time exactly who they would be, but I could imagine that possibly they are a low effort, medium effort, high effort person. The high effort person might be more eco, less lazy. The low effort person might be not as eco or maybe disabled and just not able to do it, not out of any environmental feelings. Raphael says, please give more than coffee or pizza. Yeah, I'm always surprised when people are like, I'm going to interview someone for an hour and buy them a $3 coffee. And I'm like, you suck. YouTube Watcher says, I'm starting a role as a UX researcher soon. General rule of thumb, even if I were conducting remote research interviews, usability tests, should I give incentives to my participants? Yes, unless it is illegal, unethical, or not right for your business. But yes, I always give people something. I cannot think of a study I've done in my entire career where people got nothing. If people got nothing, that was on the client. I'll give you an example. In 2013, I did a study where we interviewed insurance agents that sell insurance from insurance company X. So insurance company X, these are the agents that work for insurance company X. Insurance company X didn't want to pay the agents for us to talk to them because it was during the workday. They were already being paid. This was just an hour out of their workday, and so the idea was we don't have to give these people money. They were already being paid by us to do this job, and you're going to learn how they can do their job better. That's an example of when we haven't given people money, but especially when we're recruiting randoms, I definitely give them money, or sometimes there's something that can be exchanged that is of true value to people, and it's not coffee. When we did a study for Etsy 2 years ago, we were studying Etsy sellers, and of course Etsy sellers pay fees to Etsy. So but actually, despite the fees, Etsy gave each of them a gift card to buy things off Etsy. Everybody was thrilled with this because they were Etsy sellers, but they love to be Etsy buyers and support the community. So $100 or whatever it was to use around the Etsy site, they loved it. It was as good as cash. So again, you can use gift cards and other things like that, but you want to make sure that they make sense for your audience. I've sent people PayPal incentives when they didn't have a PayPal account, and then they were mad at me. They couldn't get the money. So we have to work out ahead of time. Do you have PayPal? Can I use PayPal? I've had people send me Amazon gift cards for Amazon USA. Yes, I'm American, but I live in Italy, so I don't order from Amazon USA. I order from Amazon Italy. If you give me an Amazon gift card, I can't use it. It's meaningless to me. Amazon, for whatever reason, I cannot transfer that. So you really do have to work with your participants to make sure that what you're giving them is an incentive and is not a burden. Janice says, awesome, Debbie. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. YouTube Watcher says, thanks for the help. Amazing information. First time on the stream. Well, good luck with the new job. I'm here live 3 or 4 times a week helping people out and taking questions. So we're here for you. You can also join our Slack and or Discord to get more help and support. Just go to deltacx.com/links. I'm going to flip back to a giant picture of me and I'll take some of the final questions. Here we go. Janice says, I wonder if you could showcase how to develop actionable insights from research, but it's difficult if you don't have real data. Yeah, I could pretend that I saw people do something and what I would do about it, but this is all a lot of pretend layered on top of pretend, and I think it would end up very abstract. And please remember to subscribe here on the YouTube channel. We're coming up on 6,000 subscribers, all organic. Please subscribe and tell other people about the channel. Drew says people should be compensated for the value they're providing to you. That's right. So remember, it's about the value. You might say, well, I'm going to be interviewing a house husband and, they don't make any money. So why don't I just give them a cup of coffee? No, it's about the value they bring to you. Don't start judging the value of what money they earn. Don't say, oh, I have to pay this person more than this person. If you are giving people $300 to come stand in their house for 3-4 hours, everybody gets that no matter where they live and what money they make. The only time we start messing with that stuff is, for example, some people say to me, hey, I've got to interview 12 surgeons. Okay, surgeons expect more than $100 an hour. You're going to have to bump that up. But in general, you give people X. Manuel says, do you disclose the incentive amount when sending the screener survey, or just state that you will give the incentive? Some spammers jump in when they see the incentive amount. Any advice? Yeah, so you need to make sure that you are writing your screener surveys to try to keep those spammers out. Sometimes we have some sneaky questions. Some people who've worked with me in the last year or so have seen me put in questions that make sure people aren't a bot. Some people are sending bots to fill these things out. So we'll say, what's 2 + 2? And you have an open box, and some people write apples, and you go, bot. Anushi says, is this what a UXR whiteboard looks like? Not necessarily. Anybody can whiteboard anything. I'm just in Axure trying to plan research and make some notes. In reality, when I plan research in real life, I usually do it in a Google Doc, because that way I can collaborate with my other researchers, because here at Delta CX, we are usually working as a team. It's not just the Debbie show. And so I'm usually doing it in Google Docs for that collaborative adventure. Raphael says, another great video. Participating in these conversations builds confidence in me. I'm learning a lot. That's beautiful. You're going to make me cry. Thank you. That's a great thing. So back to Manuel's question, we do have to look out for spammers, and there are a couple of styles of questions you can ask in the screener to try to sniff them out. Again, some is the write the number 4 in this box and they write shoes. Another is ask a question where you think a spammer would want to check off all the boxes. Like, for example, we did one, when we did the Etsy one, we had a question, what platforms do you sell on online? And we had like a list of 9. Now, is it possible that somebody sells on all 9 platforms? It's possible, but it's unlikely. Very often people have focused their online selling businesses to a few platforms that work best for them. So when somebody checked off all 9, we actually thought that was a little suspicious. In fact, you could make one up. You could say like, which of the following platforms do you sell on? Amazon, Etsy, eBay, Ogomigo. If someone checks that off, you're like, oh, it's not even a thing. It's my last name. So, there's always a way that you can sneak something in to try to see if people just kind of said yes to everything, hoping that they would be picked for the study. So don't be afraid to write in some of these sneaky traps so that you can try to figure out who that might be. And yeah, right. Manuel's crying. And so, you can do that. We've seen that in a couple of job descriptions. Who saw the job description for UX designer where they said they wanted you to be proficient at, it was something like Sketch and organic chocolate milk, which of course isn't a tool, but is so wacky it could be. And you could just imagine some UX newbie going, yeah, I know organic chocolate milk. And someone's going, that's not a thing. You're done. Drew says, what about paying people with disabilities more to compensate for more travel time or time to respond to the questionnaire or other things? You could, if you think they are putting in more effort than others and you feel that your incentive is time-based. Like, for example, if I spend 3 hours at your house, you're getting 300. If I spend 4 hours at your house, you're getting 400. If you think that your incentive is time-based, then you can certainly pay people based on how much time you think they're spending on it. But also, just because someone has a disability doesn't mean that they did spend more time on it. If somebody uses a screen reader, they might be faster at some things than you are. So I would say let's just be careful about any assumptions we make. We do want to pay people appropriately, but I don't want to make any assumptions in either direction. Yeah, and obviously be careful of asking people with disabilities to travel. Even people without disabilities hate travel. So I remember at Macy's, we used to bring people into the Macy's office where we had a special research lab. And I think they got a $100 Macy's gift card for maybe spending 2 hours with us. And of course, they had to get to our office building and then leave our office building. But they were Macy's fans, and $100 at Macy's was cool. Or maybe we gave them more, I don't remember. But whatever it was, we kind of assumed that for their time to get here and the time they're spending in our lab, they're getting 100, 200. I don't remember what the number was. It was an okay number and people were happy to get it. So yeah, this ended up being a great conversation about incentives. We're going to talk about incentives more in a few weeks when we have Michelle Ronson back on the show. She's going to be talking about the importance of recruiting correctly for these. And of course, we do talk about that in some of our Monday Think Out Loud shows. We talk about the recruiting and the incentives, but we're going to spend a whole show just on that with Michelle as our expert guest. So you can always check that out. If you want to know when that is, I don't remember. But deltacx.com/links has a link to our Google Calendar, which always has the full schedule for all of our shows and live events. We're over time. Sorry, we're running a little bit late. I'm just going to take a quick look at the calendar and tell people what's on for the rest of the week. Tomorrow is Office Hours Ask Me Anything. We have a new special guest. It's going to be Varun from Apple and Banana. I'm new to Apple and Banana, but I hear some of you are fans, and they wanted to come on the show, and I said okay. So we'll see if they can answer your tough questions. So tomorrow is Office Hours Ask Me Anything with special guest Apple and Banana. Wednesday the 28th, we're going to have Grace join us. She's one of the low ego action heroes we know from our own Slack community, and she has a presentation for us called Examining User Interface Frictions Through Design Fundamentals, and she's going to be showing a PowerPoint. No show on Thursday. I try to take Thursdays off, but then I miss all of you. And of course, Friday will be Critical Thinking Stream, where you send stuff in and I rip it to pieces so we can think critically about it and practice our critical thinking. If you'd like to send something in, of course, all of these are no charge. Just go to deltacx.com/links and you'll see how to send something in for Think Out Loud, which would be next Monday, or Practicing Critical Thinking, which is Fridays, or Tuesday's office hours. So if there's no other questions, I'm going to wrap up for today. Thanks again to Janice for sending in a cool project, fake project. I'm going to play us out of here, and I hope to see everybody tomorrow at office hours. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are